Modern life is noisy. It's overstimulated, overcomplicated, and overfull. Full of things we don't need, distractions that don't serve us, and obligations that don't align with our values. But the more we accumulate, the more we dilute ourselves. The more we cling to, the less we are free. Miyamoto Musashi rejected all of it. So did the Stoics. Musashi chose to live with almost nothing. No wealth, no servants, no home of comfort. He owned his sword, his clothing, and the sharpened clarity that came from living a life cut clean of excess. Not because he couldn't have more, but because he knew that more clouds the mind and weakens the will. The Stoics, centuries before and a continent away, taught the same. They rejected indulgence, resisted luxury, and embraced minimalism, not as poverty, but as liberation. Because when you need less, you become harder to manipulate. When you let go of what you don't control, you become unshakable. This is the discussion, simplicity as strength. Not just externally, but within. Not as aesthetics, but as a daily practice of cutting away everything that doesn't align with who you truly are. Musashi's life was a sword. Nothing extra, nothing wasted. Musashi's philosophy was a blade. Sharp, precise, and free of ornament. He lived for function, not form. He didn't wear lavish robes or seek a luxurious estate like many samurai of his time. He didn't settle. He didn't marry. He didn't accumulate status symbols. He slept on the ground, ate whatever was available, owned almost nothing, and trained relentlessly. Do not pursue the taste of good food. Do not collect weapons or practice only with one sword. Do not, under any circumstances, depend on a partial feeling. Musashi Dokodo. These weren't rules for the sake of rules, they were cutting tools. He was stripping away dependency. Dependency on comfort, on preference, on the craving for softness. He believed that every unnecessary thing, material, emotional, or mental, was a weakness, a place for fear to take root, a gap in discipline, a point of vulnerability. So he chose the sharp edge of simplicity. The Stoics called it voluntary poverty, and they practiced it. Stoicism is often mistaken for passive acceptance, but the great Stoics weren't passive. They were cutthroat in their clarity. They examined every want, every habit, every belief, and if it didn't serve virtue, they let it go. Seneca, one of the wealthiest philosophers of Rome, spent regular days sleeping on the floor, eating basic food, wearing rough clothing, not because he had to, but because he chose to train his soul, to remind himself that luxury was a lie. Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, saying to yourself the while, "Is this the condition I feared?" Seneca. Epictetus was even more blunt. Born a slave, he rose to become one of the most revered Stoic teachers. He owned very little and desired even less. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. This is simplicity as self-respect, not self-punishment, but self-sovereignty. Why less is more and more is often a trap. Musashi and the Stoics weren't anti-material. They were anti-dependence. There's a difference. It wasn't about rejecting all comfort, but about never being enslaved by it. Because comfort makes cowards. The more you have, the more you fear losing. The more you depend on, the easier it is to be controlled. A soft man is easily shaped, but a man who needs nothing cannot be coerced. This is the strength of simplicity. You can walk away from a bad deal. You can say no to temptation. You don't crumble when the economy shifts. You don't need permission to act. You don't fear change because you don't cling to what's impermanent. Musashi lived like this. When others obsessed over status and hierarchy, he trained alone, walked alone, fought alone. Not because he wanted isolation, but because he wanted clarity. The Stoics agreed clarity comes from detachment. Mental simplicity is even harder and more important. It's one thing to live with few possessions, it's another to simplify your mind. Musashi didn't allow cluttered thinking. His combat style was based on directness, no flashy moves, no unnecessary emotion. Every strike was efficient, every movement purposeful. This reflected his inner life. He had cut away excess mental chatter. The primary thing when you take a sword in your hands is your intention to cut the enemy. Musashi. Not to impress, not to hesitate, just intention, action. Clean, clear, final. The Stoics cultivated the same clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote Meditations not as a showpiece, but as a tool to cleanse his thoughts. He returned again and again to the same questions. What is within my control? Am I acting according to nature? Is this necessary? If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Marcus Aurelius. Simplicity of thought means you don't waste time on gossip, self-pity, fantasies, or distraction. It means being decisive, not impulsive. You act with clarity, you respond with calm, you move through the world uncluttered. Simplicity is the foundation of focus. Musashi's victories weren't fueled by talent alone, they were powered by focus. He wasn't faster than everyone, he was clearer. While others were distracted by status, reputation, or fear, he remained locked in. Focus is impossible with a cluttered mind, and cluttered minds come from cluttered lives. The Stoics made this a daily discipline. They reminded themselves each morning to expect hardship and disappointment. Not to be pessimistic, but to remain grounded, to avoid surprise, to stay prepared. They didn't fill their days with busy work. They focused on one thing, living in accordance with virtue. Seneca again. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. And what wastes our time more than distractions? Simplicity is not about doing less. It's about doing what matters, completely. You don't need to renounce everything, but you must rule over it. Let's be clear, Musashi wasn't a monk. The Stoics didn't all live in rags. This isn't about rejecting success or aesthetic living. It's about mastery. You can enjoy what you have, so long as you don't need it. You must be able to walk away, to let it go, to lose something and still be you. Musashi would rather sleep in a cave than serve a lord who compromised his freedom. The Stoics would rather be exiled than flatter corrupt power. You must ask yourself, if I lost everything I own, would I still respect myself? If I had no title, no followers, no status, would I still act with virtue? If I had nothing left but my mind, would it be a place worth living? That's the test of simplicity. Simplicity is not just the absence of things, it's the presence of clarity. Miyamoto Musashi lived without servants, silk robes, or social standing, but he possessed something far rarer, complete self-command. He didn't need praise to act. He didn't need comfort to endure. He didn't need wealth to feel secure. Why? Because he had mastered what mattered and cut away everything else. The Stoics lived the same way. They didn't seek a monastery or a mountaintop. They lived in cities, served in governments, managed wealth, and yet chose not to be ruled by any of it. To them, the real danger wasn't poverty. It was dependency. It was the creeping attachment to anything that, once lost, could unmake a man's peace. In this second part, we'll explore how to turn their philosophies into practice, how to simplify your external world, your internal habits, and your sense of self. Not to punish, not to deprive, but to refine, because the less you carry, the faster you move, and the less you need, the freer you are. 1. Audit your environment. What do you actually need? Musashi's life was stripped of indulgence by design. He slept on the floor, traveled light, owned only what served his training. Everything else was a liability. You don't have to go live in a cave, but you do need to ask what's essential. The Stoics often used the phrase, according to nature. That meant not what is natural in the biological sense, but what is right, simple, and aligned with your true purpose. Seneca challenged his students to examine their homes, their clothes, their habits. Look at everything you own and ask, could I be free without this? Try this. Clean one drawer today, remove what you don't use, review your subscriptions, apps, and digital clutter. Walk through your space and remove anything you keep out of habit, not utility. You don't need to be a minimalist in image. You need to be a minimalist in function. Ask, is this helping me live the life I intend to live? If the answer is no, let it go. 2. Simplify your schedule. Protect space for what matters. Busyness is not productivity. It's distraction disguised as virtue. Musashi wasn't idle, but he was never busy. He had time to write, paint, meditate, and train for hours each day. How? Because he said no to anything that wasn't aligned with his way, you must do the same. Start by identifying your non-negotiables, those few things that, if done consistently, shape you. Training, reading, reflection, sleep, creative work. Then protect those blocks of time like a fortress. The Stoics would argue that if your calendar is ruled by everyone else's demands, you are not free. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, if you seek tranquility, do less, or do what's essential, which brings a double satisfaction, to do less and to do it well. Try blocking 60 to 90 minutes per day for deep focus, scheduling silence, yes, literally blocking off time for reflection, saying no to obligations that clutter your life with no return. Simplicity in time is not laziness, it's leverage. 3. Clarify your emotional diet, let go of what you can't control. Musashi taught that you must detach from partial feelings, impulses, preferences, emotional fog. Not because emotions are evil, but because indulgence in them weakens clarity. The Stoics held a near-identical stance. They didn't deny emotion, they denied the illusion that emotion is truth. Seneca taught, he who is brave is free. He who cannot rule his desires is their slave. Ask yourself, what do I dwell on emotionally that offers no return? What arguments, comparisons, or regrets clutter my peace? What mental noise am I choosing to entertain? To simplify emotionally means to withdraw your attention from what drains you and reinvest it where it can shape you. You can feel disappointment without indulging in despair. You can notice anger without feeding it. You can acknowledge fear and still walk forward. That's minimalism of the heart, no wasted pain. 4. Refine the inner voice. Speak only what strengthens. Musashi never wasted words. His writing was sparse, his speech deliberate. He didn't ornament thought with indulgent language. Every phrase cut to the bone. The Stoics urged the same: speak less, speak clearly, and speak only what aligns with virtue. Let your speech be brief, plain, and unambiguous. Epictetus. In modern life, this means simplifying your inner dialogue too. How much of your self-talk is noisy, indulgent, or self-defeating? Try this. Remove negative, vague language from your mind. Don't say, I'm overwhelmed. Say, I have a lot to prioritize. Replace judgment with observation. Instead of, I failed, say, that didn't work. Why? Use mantras that reinforce clarity. Just this one action, just this one moment, just this one truth. Language is power. Simplicity in speech leads to precision in thought. 5. Practice voluntary discomfort to reset your needs. Musashi didn't avoid discomfort, he cultivated it. He trained with wooden weapons against steel, slept outdoors, ate plain food. Why? To weaken attachment, to strengthen resolve, to stay sharp. Seneca too practiced voluntary poverty. He advised taking regular time to live as though destitute so that you would stop fearing it. Try this. Fast for a day, not to punish but to remind yourself that hunger isn't the enemy. Sleep on the floor once a week. Spend one day offline in silence without entertainment. Wear the same clothes intentionally for a week, not to be noticed, but to train indifference. The goal isn't to suffer, it's to strip away the illusion that you need comfort to be capable. 6. Recommit to one core principle and build around it. Simplicity is alignment. Musashi's entire life revolved around the way, his path of discipline, combat, and clarity. Every decision served that center. The Stoics called this living according to nature, meaning living in accordance with your true nature, rational, virtuous, and purpose-driven. You don't need dozens of goals, you need one center. Ask yourself, what one principle do I want my life to express? What would it look like to arrange my days around it? What do I do out of habit that conflicts with that principle? Once you know your center, everything else becomes easier to cut away. Musashi wasn't distracted because he was committed. The Stoics weren't scattered because they were rooted. So choose your route. Conclusion: simplicity is strength. You don't need to renounce everything to be strong, but you do need to release what weakens you. Musashi didn't become unbeatable because he had more. He became unstoppable because he needed less. And the Stoics didn't remain calm because life was easy, but because they removed the unnecessary. What you remove is just as important as what you pursue. Remove the noise. Remove the clutter. Remove the dependency. Remove the indulgence. And what remains? Clarity, power, stillness, direction, freedom. This is the sharp edge of simplicity, not decorative but decisive. The man who walks this path doesn't fear loss, he doesn't crave distraction, he doesn't fold under change. He is light, clear and free, and nothing owns him, because he owns himself.